All right, how's it going, everyone? Yeah, my name's DrWeez. Thanks for tuning into my Twitch channel. Tonight we are only coming to you on Twitch. I seem to be having some technical difficulties getting Facebook to run nicely. So I'm still faced with some bandwidth issues by the looks of things from the from my local ISP. I've tried to log a call with them, but it looks like what's happening is they seem to be shaping the bandwidth going through to Taiwan. So I'm trying to get this resolved. So we do have a few drop frames in the stream, but it shouldn't prevent us from getting the message across. So the plan tonight is to continue from where I finished off on Tuesday with the XTU tweaker's guide or beginner's guide or ambient temperature guide. I don't know what you want to refer it to. It's basically just like my hints and tips for XTU or my guidelines of what you should be looking at for the basics. Tonight we're going to focus on 6700K, so our limitations really will be on the amount of voltage and the cooling that we have, whereas on Tuesday night we focused on the non-K overclocking, so your limit was there on the base clock. So it's a completely different methodology. The basics are all still the same, so we'll go over what we covered on Tuesday and have another look at the non-K stuff. So let's go through the rigs that we've got going today. I'll transition that across and just give you guys a have a look-see. So once again, we've got our power delivered by the Corsair Elite AX1500i. Our cooling today is the Netom 280L. I've got two 140mm jet flow fans. I am pushing air through from this direction through the radiator. The video card is the RX 480 Strix from ROG. And the motherboard is the Maximus VIII Genie. The memory tonight we'll be playing with is some BDI, so we can get the frequency up a little bit and those timings tighter a little bit. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the system all switched on, make sure that that's all working, and then I'm going to go through what I covered on Tuesday night, and then just go through some of the basics of the overclocking on the 6700K using ambient temperature for cooling, or should I say all-in-one cooling. So the reason why I'm doing these little focus groups on XTU and a couple of the other benchmarks using ambient temperatures is Rage Expo is coming up in approximately 2.5 weeks, or maybe 3 weeks time. And for any of you guys that are thinking of taking part in some of the events that will be coming up, this will give you a good foundation, maybe to give you some hints and some tips of how to fine-tune your scores and give you a really good chance of winning some great hardware. And this is my little gift to you, shall I say. All right, so let's go have a look quickly. What we covered on Tuesday, the first couple of points is select the right operating system. Okay, do not over-tweak the operating system. Set your power profile in the control panel. So those are like some of the basics. What you really need to do, and this goes for extreme overclocking and egg overclocking, if you're taking part in competition, you really need to test each thing that you're changing. Some tweaks will hurt you more than they'll give you advantage. So you really need to change one thing, test it, change one thing, test it. And with XTU, there's a little bit of a variance, so you've got to test up and down multiple times. Right, so the rest of it here is basically around the non-K overclocking, and these are the scores that we managed to get. So we started off with a score of 984, the max core frequency was 3.5, and eventually we ended off with a score of 1085. So if you're interested, if you're doing some non-K overclocking, take a look at that video. The replays are up on YouTube, so it's got some basic information in it. So today, with using the K processor, we have a little bit more freedom and flexibility, so we can do things like overclocking the base clock in Windows, and we can change the multiplier up above what the standard is. So there's a little bit more flexibility, and our limitation really comes in now on the voltages that are set and the memory timings, as well as when your particular processor hits the throttling. So one of the things I covered on Tuesday was the configuration of XTU, and that was mainly around your throttling identifiers that aren't displayed by default. So it's a really good idea to just get those things configured. So I'm just going to run a quick stock benchmark just at whatever settings are done in the BIOS. So if we have a look at CPU-Z, and if we have a look at your ASRock timing, you see that everything is pretty much stock standard. I've set nothing. So our memory is at 1070, and our core speed is 4.2. So let's just go ahead and run that. I've got a few questions coming through on the chat that I just want to answer, and I'll be back. You're right. Okay, Draftman, to answer your question, the live is not active on Facebook. That's quite correct, yeah. I was having some bandwidth issues. The minute I went live on Facebook, my kilobytes per second just dropped way down, and I thought it was coinciding with that, so I've left the Facebook off. That's off for a reason tonight. So we're only coming live. This stream is only live on Twitch tonight. And unfortunately, my drop frames are still around the 30% mark, and my kilobits per second is a little bit yo-yoing up between 4 megasecond and 400 kilobytes per second. It's really not looking pretty. All right, so there our base score is in. Now I'm going to go ahead and just create a new document for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the score 1196, and then the frequency, which is 4.21. Maybe what we can also do is we can record the temperature. So the maximum highest temperature is 57 degrees. And the reason why we want to do that is just it might give you some sort of to see the history. It might be quite good at the end. So we'll save that and we exit it. So the first place you can get a boost is through pure megahertz, so through the CPU core and the CPU cache megahertz. And let's go ahead and push that up. Okay, so overclocking presets. We will not use any of those. We're going to put everything onto manual. We'll leave our base clock at 100, and we'll get to base clock just now. We'll try what should be fairly easy 47 multiplier. For my cooling and this processor, 47 should be very easily done. We'll then also set our cache ratio up to 47, and we'll just set that up to max. Under Tweaker's Paradise, I don't need to set anything for air overclocking. Under CPU power management, I leave it all as default. The DigiVRM is an interesting one. So I'm going to leave it all at stock for now. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to hit some sort of limiting on the CPU power. So I want to show you how you can identify it and how you can fix it. And hopefully we run into that quite quickly. So the CPU voltage, I'm going to change to manual, and we'll just put that at 1.35. Yeah, you probably don't need to go as high as that this quickly, but I'm just trying to max out the CPU quite quick. And the DRAM voltage, we'll leave it auto, and the DRAM settings, we just leave it auto. That just would be the first step, is max out your CPU. Once you've maxed out your CPU, you can then max out your memory. And then once you've done max out your memory and your CPU, then there's one other trick up my sleeve, where you can gain a little extra performance. So the question is, have any tips for Skylake K binning? Yeah, Skylake is such a tricky, what do I want to say, chip, because what looks good on air might not necessarily be good on liquid nitrogen, and what's good looks like it will be good on liquid nitrogen might not necessarily be good on air. So the binning trick, I think, for Skylake is to find a batch that scales, and then find a batch that likes cold. And then typically speaking, anything with a decent VID within that scaling and cold batch should be okay. But you know, there've been a couple of articles out there of how guys have done the binning. A good air chip does not necessarily mean a good liquid nitrogen chip. Right, okay. So yeah, the question is, am I setting a target clock or a target voltage first? Well, to be perfectly honest, what I'm doing is I'm just setting a clock and a voltage, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test to see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'll then adjust the voltage until it does work, and then I'll adjust the clock until I max out what the voltage is. And typically what you'll find, especially when using an all-in-one cooler or water cooling or air cooling, is that you will hit your limit on voltage and heat before you hit the chip limit. So that's really where your complications come in, is finding out where your frequency to voltage to cooling ratio is, where that sweet spot is. Yeah, I've heard some nice things about that X batch. There are some good chips that have come out of that factory. I've got 2 new chips arriving next week, which I'm quite excited for. I haven't binned a fresh 6700K since I got my Case King chip. In fact, I just haven't bothered because Case King has done my dirty work for me. Right, so that seemed to run fine, not a problem. And we'll just go ahead and record those details. And let's just go this down, and then we go 1283. Our maximum thing is 169, and our maximum temperature is 62 degrees. So we won't go ahead, we won't reboot this. What we can do is, we just do a turbo call, and from here we just up to now 48. You can leave the cache ratio at that. We're just now going to check to see our voltages and our temperatures. At 62 degrees, our temperatures are still very nice. Let's see how far we can push it. So when it comes to XTU and a frequency limited competition, in other words, you cannot run above a certain frequency, it then comes down 100% to operating system fine tuning, as well as memory configuration and CPU IMC, internal memory controller. So there we go, we can run 4.8, and you notice our temperature only increased by a degree. But look at our score, how nicely it is climbing. So looking good. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll just go into Turbo V and we just up the ratio one more and run it again. Yeah, I think okay, so there what's happened now is we've got into the benchmark. Our temperature wasn't a problem, but we have hung. So that means it must be a voltage limitation. So we'll go ahead and reboot. We'll try applying a little bit more voltage and seeing if we can complete the test. So to answer your question about can you buy from Case King in the US, I'm pretty sure you can. They shipped all the way to sunny South Africa, so I'm pretty sure they'll ship to the US. But you might want to speak to Mark 00950053. He was talking the other day on the stream about CPU mafia in the States, where they were buying pre-bin chips from. So I think there is a market or a supplier in the States that is selling pre-bin chips. I don't know the contact details. You'd have to speak to Mark 0053. So we're going to go ahead and set 49 again, but what I'm going to do is just increase the CPU voltage and try again. So our package temperature is really hovering around 61 degrees. That's it's pretty good. It looks like I should have been using this chip during the rail bench challenge, because this is better than the chip I was using at these voltages and frequency, that is. Alright, so the extra voltage has definitely helped us nudge it a little bit further, and we are able to run XTU at 4.9 gigahertz. Okay, but now you'll notice something else. Our score has decreased. Maximum temperature 64. So what we should do is just change that cache ratio up to 49 as well. Maybe leave it 48. I don't think it scales. We'll have to test that. Okay, so we'll leave that at 48. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so we'll leave that 47. We'll go try 50 now at 1.4 volts. Okay, so that didn't run. So it's not a voltage, it's not a temperature issue. It's just a processor issue. So now that you've determined the maximum sort of clock, go ahead and you can set it, and then just go ahead and set the voltages to what you want to run. So we were happy at 1.48, at 1.35. This is our most efficient run. The next step is really to maximize out your memory. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and just set a nice and easy 3866 DRAM timing control. Your number one ally whenever starting off a memory overclock can be your memory presets, unless of course you have really worked them out and you've got a really good understanding of what your timing should be. I'm just going to go ahead and load. Actually, no, I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to go ahead and set a very easy 12, 12, 28 and command rate 1 to 28. 220, no, 228. And then the very important timings for XTU is your T4 needs to be at least 16, and then you need to get your RTLs under control, but they should train nicely with some good RTLs. The other thing I need to do is to set my DRAM voltage. We're going to set that to 1.7. Let's try 1.7. System agent voltage 1.25, and your IO voltage 1.1, 1.2, 1.1, and that should give us 3866 easy with a 4.8 overclock. No. Maybe need to set up a little bit more SA. I mean, IO voltage. I'm getting a 41 postcode, which means something that I've set on the memory isn't quite kosher. On the ROG boards, especially the Series 8 Maximus boards, you got the retry and the safe mode button. Really handy when you've set up a bad memory overclock like I just did. You can hit the safe mode button. You can get back into the BIOS. You can fix what you think you've done wrong, or you can try a different setting and go ahead without having to clear the BIOS. So I think maybe let's try that, and we can just do this, see what that does. Okay, so still getting 41. What have I set wrong? Hold a second, let me just check this out. Clearly I'm not thinking straight somewhere. Total 28, 240. That should all be fine on auto. I think maybe it could be, let's just try 1.2. Okay, so it was, I think SA voltage or IO voltage was the problem there. I just didn't have enough set for the frequency. Okay, so what you're seeing now is around memory timings as well. So Windows is trying to load, but it's not able to put any of its information into the system memory, which is causing the problem. Actually, maybe an easier way to go about this is to show you the effect that XMP has. I've never used this memory on XMP before. It will be a first time for me, I guess. Never test something live. Okay. Okay. Doesn't like that setting either. I want to go to load up my defaults, and then I want to go to XMP. Let's just see if this memory even does XMP without anything being set. Okay, so this set is not even running XMP on this IMC. So this is not my best CPU, not by a long shot. That's why I'm using it on this type of testing, because I just don't mind if it gets broken. But then at the same time, when things don't work right, I look like a bit of a tit, don't I? So what I've just done is I've just put a different set of memory in just to see if it is a set of memory or if it is IMC that's not running those settings. So we'll just do the same thing, just F10 to restart. Right, so it appears I do have a set that is superior to another set. I won't have to get those sent in for RMA because they won't even run XMP. Ah. Alright, so after that, it's now looking like that set of memory is not running XMP. I'm going to just put them back in again and see what the story is there. Maybe I'll just change their positions. It is the first time I was testing the set, and that is set number 56 out of 100. That is not working. There might have just been something not sitting correctly. So that's why we just got to retry it. No, it's a 41 postcode straight away. That is not good. Yeah, so yeah, I bought a set of these Galax B dials. They're much better than my Trident Z's, unfortunately. But I do have some very early Trident Z's. So I'm trying to get rid of my Trident Z's to get another set of Trident Z's, the later model. It's very difficult, all this bloody B dial stuff, man. It's expensive to try and find a good kit. Okay, so that's not run after switching their positions. So I'm going to have to test that kit extensively because it didn't want to do XMP initially, but it's doing XMP now. So let's go ahead and just go and clock that processor back up to where we were with the memory on XMP. Then we should be able to tune the memory down a bit, and you know, a fairly decent score should be achievable. And that is the basics of what I wanted to cover tonight. Where are we on the CPU? Okay, so we're at stock CPU. Let's run a XTU before we do any clocking, again, just to make sure. Okay, so I discussed a little earlier about the ROG Expo event coming up in 2.5 weeks' time. I can confirm that there would be 2 events at the Expo that will be lovely. That will have overclockers involved in. So the first one being the Gigabyte OC workshop. You can find that at the Rectron stand. So look out for the information about that event and sign up to take part in that one. It should be quite good. The second event that I'll be taking part in is the MSI PC building workshop. So the idea is that we're going to just show you the basics of how to tune your BIOS and how to build a PC. And we're going to do an all-in-one workshop as well, so show you how to install and mount an all-in-one machine. Probably not really earth-shattering stuff if you are an overclocker or if you know your way around a computer already. The thing is, we are doing a really good price, so there's a total of 72 seats over the weekend available for you to come and take part in our event. And out of those 72 people that take part, one of them will be walking away with a $2,000 PC that will be custom built by myself, fine-tuned by myself, and if you're in the Joburg area, hand delivered. So that's quite a good one. I'd really, we'll be launching the sign-up page in the next couple of days. Don't muck about, get yourself onto that list if you are attending ROG. It's a really good price. Okay, so what we can see straight away from here is how we have achieved a score that is pretty much our best score so far, and our CPU is still down. So what we've benefited from the most is our memory overclock. And what our memory is set to at the moment is 2000 megahertz. You can see here, so we're running at 2000 megahertz. And just that boost in memory clock has now pushed our score up past where we were able to reach with a 4.8 overclock. So with that in mind, we now go and set the CPU up with the memory up, and we see where we get to. And this is really where you now start to see the combination of your CPU clock and your memory clock pushing that score further and further. So when you're taking part in these workshops and in these overclock competitions, if you aren't limited to frequency, you really need to try and see how can you maximize your memory overclock and your CPU overclock. By pushing that one or two base clock further than your competitor, you are going to get the boost and the benefit. And that is where the next phase of this lesson comes in. So we're just going to set a 48 there. We're going to set a 48 here. Okay, and we just set a 1.35 onto the core. 48 was 1.3. Let's go 375 for shits and giggles. And let's just get back into Windows. Alright, so I need to change the HDMI splitter. The picture is not very pretty in some of these screens. I think the HDMI splitter is overheating. Luckily I do have a spare. Ooh, pretty. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. So, Timothy, your HDMI splitter is overheating and causing some display problems. Alright, so where we're at now, we have got our CPU set to 4.8, we've got our memory set to 2000. We'll go ahead and run a benchmark and get a score. Okay, so I haven't hit the power limit throttling, and I haven't hit the thermal throttling, and I haven't hit the current limit throttling. But those are very important things to watch out for during this type of this overclocking. What you might find is happening, because I got the voltage up enough, it's not, or I might even have those options disabled in the BIOS. I'm not quite sure, but those will highlight or change color to yellow. And when you start hitting power limit throttling, you need to go and increase your power limits in the BIOS. When you start hitting thermal throttling, you need to try and decrease your voltages. And when you're hitting current limit throttling, you then need to just increase your current limit in the BIOS, and there are settings for that. Right, so there's our score. Our temperature is climbing. So we basically gained 60 points, and that's pretty good going. Over the current equivalent at 4.79 was 1310. We got 14.8. So 1408, and that was at 4.79, and our temperature got up to 68. We can just do this as well. This is score. Then we've got clock, and then we've got temp. Okay. So if we run that again quickly, just to get our average. Alright, we've broken. Alright, so let's get straight on to the last tip that I have, for the last bit of advice I have for limited or for all-in-one / air / water cooling limits. Okay, well, I'm getting 55 errors now. Again, this memory IMC. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, so what I've done is I've just put a fan to just get a little bit of air to move over that south bridge, or what we used to call their south bridge chip, which is now basically the chipset. It was getting a little bit warm. It shouldn't be a problem. That shouldn't be the reason why I'm getting memory issues. So the last bit of advice I have is regarding the memory overclock and the base clock and the CPU multiplier. So you might find in some scenarios that your base clock, a lower multiplier with a higher base clock, is able to get your memory just 10 or 15 megahertz more than your previous maximum was. And those 10 or 15 megahertz will make the world of difference when it comes to you know, those pushing the scores to the absolute limit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just set this to 3. In fact, let's just go to memory. We'll set a memory preset. Okay, we'll just set that. So it's a very easy setting. We just set that to 1.8. And let's just make sure that boots. Okay, so the memory has trained at that speed. So let me put that into practice for you. Let's put a clock in place here. So we were at 48 and 48. Okay, and then our memory clock was 3866. Where's the memory? Oh, never mind. The DRAM frequency is set to auto. So if we put this to sort of 3866, for instance, right? Okay, so I've just changed the memory set out again because it's not running at an easy setting, unless this IMC really is that bad. But doing the settings I put in there now should be very easy for this memory. I'm thinking I've got a bad set of memory there. Yeah. Right, so we've set the profile 3866, and we've set a 48 multiplier. We'll get a score, and then I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Right, so the memory is just at 1933, and let's just get a score there quickly. And let's just put your 1933 memory profile. Right, so we can now save our score 1587, and that was at 4.79, and our maximum temperature was 72. So if you take this as your theoretical max, you can't go up any more in the multiplier. You can't go up any more in the memory divider. The next trick is then to stick in those memory dividers and in that multiplier and increase your base clock. Or if you are at fixed, then what you need to do, and I'm getting 55 errors here again. I think the CPU is not so great. Or if you're on a fixed frequency, then you would up your base clock, down your multiplier to stay within your fixed frequency percentage. And I'd really like to demonstrate that, but I'm not going to fight with this too much. I hate overclocking like this when stuff's not working the right. I think it's time to sell the CPU. Alright, so anyway, let's go and have a look here. So for instance, if you were to now hit 47, you'd need to then increase your base clock up until 102, which would then give you 48. So if you increase that until you get to 4.8, you'll notice that your memory is now much higher, but your frequency is still the same. So let's just get the cache voltage, just go back to 46 here. So you see how that now keeps your target CPU the same, but your DRAM frequency up. And there you will get a boost in score. So I think what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to test both sets of these memories with my good IMC on the Impact, and really just make sure that they are able to do at least the minimum as to what they've been sold for, and then from there to see what the maximum is. Anyway. Alright, so Yes, great question. And I am running a 32-bit operating system, and that is why if you have a look at the very first thing on my list of things to do is to select the right operating system. So that's also operating system version as well as operating system technology, I think is the right word to use. So 64-bit or 32-bit does play a role. And the operating system I've used here is Windows 8.1, the latest version available on MSDN, 32-bit. Right, and there you can see how we are down on the processor cache frequency, but we are up on our memory, which has in fact put us up quite considerably on our score. And the only difference really was our memory clock. So the trick here is to get your maximum frequency, get that memory up as high as you possibly can take it, and then you should be able to max out your score. So memory up as high as possible, get those timings nice and tight, make sure you're running the right operating system, don't over tweak the operating system. That's another very valuable piece of advice. Make sure if you are going to make any changes to the operating system's core, test each one as you do it. Don't be shy to try things. There are some gains to be found. There are some things that really hurt. And then just try and nudge that memory up as much as possible in the BIOS and then from Windows. Small increases give you small boosts. Big increases give you nice big boosts. And that, I think, in a nutshell, is my XTU in a nutshell, XTU guide, XTU tweaks, XTU secrets, per se. I'd love to hear from you guys if you have any questions, if you'd like me to clarify anything that I might have gone over a little bit too quickly. Feel free to drop me a message on Facebook or on Twitch. I think there is some sort of DM system here. And I'll be more than happy to try and answer your questions. If you'd like me to go over some sort of preparation or guide or something to that effect, let me know. I'm going to be a little busy next week I'm doing a course, so I don't think there'll be any streams next week. I'll be then back doing the Real Bench Challenge, which starts up next Friday. So I'll see what the rules are for the next stage and then do a stream or two on that. And then other exciting news is obviously Galax have announced the GOC qualifiers, which will be starting soon. And yeah, it'll be trying to get my hands on that hardware and definitely be taking part in that where I can. Just remember, when running XTU, take notes, make records of what you changed, when you changed it, and how it affected the score. Your score might go up, it might, and then come down, and then go up again. But you need to know where those curves are and where those deltas are. Maximum frequency might not be the sweet spot based on throttling and temperatures and a couple other things. So you really need to just see where are you getting that that good delta. But I think overall, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and say thank you for tuning in. I'm going to get some rest in. Don't forget this weekend is Pro OC Cup. Pre-recorded my overclocking for that already, so it will be uploaded probably Friday or Saturday. But the rest of the guys should be doing some scores, so keep an eye out for that. I think I'm going to wrap it up and say thanks for tuning in, and until next time, happy benching.